Despite the diversity among Pacific Island cultures, there are foundational similarities that underpin the Pacifica worldview. These shared principles and values are woven into daily life, relationships, and community practices across the region. Pacific worldviews emphasize the interconnectedness of all aspects of life: spiritual, physical, social, and environmental. Well-being is not in isolation, but as a balance between these interconnected domains. Identity and belonging are rooted in family and community, with individuals seen as part of a wider collective rather than as isolated entities. In relationship with the natural world, there's a strong sense of guardianship and stewardship over the land, sea, and resources, reflecting an understanding of humans as part of the natural world.
What I really deeply appreciated through partnering with iwi is a reframing of these kind of nature-based solutions projects where it's not thinking about it as a new technology that solves our flooding problems or solves our environmental problems. It's actually reframing it and saying, what do we owe the whenua? What do we owe the wai? What are our responsibilities to it to bring it back into a state of well-being and health? And that really kind of flips how you make decisions around projects like this. It becomes bigger than just serving a human need. One of the first things they did was challenge us to be more aspirational around our treatment of the Aotearoa stream. At one point it was going to remain underground and just be a kind of greenway project, but they really championed the fact that it needed to come out of the ground and daylighting needed to be a core aspect of what we did here. So they looked really holistically about what it meant to lift the mauri of this place. And that wasn't just the physical infrastructure, it was also around how we took the community on the journey with us and also how we embedded traditional mātauranga and knowledge. They set some very clear aspirations and guidelines for that we've been able to measure alongside mana whenua to see if we are in fact lifting the mauri and the mana of both the awa but the people that live around it as they move back into the houses that are being built in this area. In this part of the project, an existing sports field was effectively lowered and now stores 6 Olympic swimming pools worth of water in flood events. This was completed just before the anniversary weekend floods and worked incredibly. We didn't see any significant downstream flooding from this area, and we've got photos the day after where it was usable as a sports field again. So it just slowly drained away and the field's been designed so that it can be usable again quite quickly with minimum maintenance required.
I've had the privilege of being practicing in Wynyakota for the last decade and involved with many of the public realm projects that have taken place down here. The history of this land is that it's all reclaimed land, and it was petrochemical storage and a bunch of industrial uses for many years, and as a result there's a lot of contamination of different types in the soil. That drove a lot of our decision making in terms of how we could bring people in contact with the land or not, and also that drove all of our considerations around water and the passage of water from when it lands on a surface to where it runs to, makes its way through soils and through the roots of plants, and then where does it end up and how does it get out to the sea. So adjacent to the carriageway, all of the water is making its way into rain gardens and soaking through and depositing any of those heavy metals. And then the kind of next row back from that is more linear in nature, and those are all swales which are treating water and transmitting water as it makes its way along the street. So in a big flood event, it's the swales that are doing a lot of that, the storm kind of buffering role, which is to contain a whole lot of water before it makes its way into the ground plane of any of these buildings. Those times that your project that's specifically designed to flood actually experiences a major flood. Yeah, that was definitely a sleepless night for me. Basically all of those swales filled up to 1/2 metre deep in water, and in some places more than that, and you basically had a moving torrent of water making its way in a linear fashion along Doherty Street out to sea. And it was all gone within a couple of hours. So it all worked as designed, and the only clues that something had happened where kind of all of the grasses and reeds lying down in the same direction was the clue that a whole lot of water had made its way through there. And our stormwater engineer was absolutely chuffed with that.
The project intentionally put nature and the Aotearoa stream at the heart. We could have addressed flooding just by building more and larger pipes, but what we've learned over time is that those grey infrastructure systems just aren't resilient, and what we're seeing with climate adaptation and climate change is they just reach capacity and then the flooding still happens. So by creating kind of and integrating natural systems, you create a more kind of resilient, flexible approach. But the other amazing benefit of a kind of blue-green approach is you get all these co-benefits. You get the birds back, you create aquatic habitat for other creatures, and there is that real kind of sense of pride and community that's come from bringing the natural environment back and bringing the stream back. You wouldn't get that with a pipe.
I live and work here in the city centre, and so I spend a lot of time just moving through these spaces in my day-to-day life, and you can't help but observe on how everything works. I think we all have to learn from built examples. We have to study how they've performed over time and try and understand a bit about the complexities that are going on and use that to inform what we're building. And then we've got a Mataranga lens, an Indigenous lens on how things can be thought about more holistically. And I think there's lots of interesting things there which I'm no expert on, but are things that we've been detached from in the Western world. We've kind of lost contact with life force and personification of things, so that's where Mataranga gives us so much value to learn from. We've got to get out there and test it in the real world and learn from each other in doing so.